Hey guys, it's Ryan, bass player from The Machine. Just wanted to walk you through my rig and give you a little background, behind the scenes look as to what goes on in bass world. So let's start here with the guitars. This is my main 4-string bass. It's kind of a hybrid of a newer Fender body from the 90s and an old Fender neck from the 70s. If you can see right there, 76 50615. That means it was built in 1976. So it's quite old, almost as old as I am, but not there yet. And the body's kind of new. It's more of a modern design from the 90s with a badass bridge. That's a little modification that I like to add to my basses. It's a little bit better quality bridge than what Fender gives you. And the reason I like these modern bodies is because the strings go through the body as opposed to just into the bottom of the bridge, so it gives you a little bit more sustain, better tone, and that kind of thing. The other thing about this bass, and all of them, just to be able to play certain songs, we have this hip shot tuner which brings the E string down to a D. So I use that quite often, a lot in the wall. A lot of songs are down to D. You have the another brick in the wall. It's got the that kind of thing. That's got your low D in there. And a few other places throughout the night where that comes in handy, just to kind of give you a little bit more versatility from a 4-string. So moving on to the next bass, we've got our 1997 fretless here. This was originally a white body that came with this fretless neck, and I swapped it out to get that Roger Waters black bass look. Same thing here, going into the back of the guitar here with the strings and the badass bridge. Same electronics are in everything, just stock Fender pickups, and this again has the hip shot detuner. So that's the basic idea for the basses. As far as the amps go, for my bass section of everything, starts on top here with the power supply, just a typical monster power kind of thing. Regulates the voltage coming in and distributes power to all the components. Moving down from there, I have the chord tuner. Comes in handy quite a bit. And moving down to this piece here, this is an Ampeg preamp with a tube circuit in it, and basically it's the same basic idea as a preamp that comes in an SVT power head, but it's just for preamp. So you don't need if you don't need to amplify your signal beyond that, this is what you use. This basically gets my tone. This goes almost direct into the mixing console, and since we use in-ears, I don't really hear anything coming from the speakers at this point, so this is where all my sound comes from. So inside of this is an effects loop, which I use this TC Electronic G major, and that just gives me a couple of delays and a few other select effects here and there, and a DVX compressor, and that just sort of levels the signal out a little bit. For bass, you kind of want it as even as possible. And the compressor just gives you a little bit of a ceiling on the top and sort of a floor on the bottom that kind of evens out the level. Down here, we've got a Mesa Boogie Bass 400, which I used to use before we went into in-ears. This was my main bass amp at that point that ran this cabinet. I love the way it sounds, but since we're on in-ears these days, I don't really need to hear this cabinet that much. So this is just here mainly as a backup, and sometimes on stages where I can't hear the PA that well, I'll turn the rig a little bit and get a little bit more coming out of here, just so I can feel the bass signal a little bit more. Because if you don't feel the bass, sometimes it really doesn't feel like you're playing at all, because the in-ears don't deliver the bottom end that well. Over here we've got an old 8x10 Mesa Boogie cabinet, which barely does any work at this point because, like I said before, I'm using the in-ear monitors, so I don't really listen to this much. In some gigs, you know, like I said, if there's a venue where I can't hear the PA very well, I'll turn this up just to kind of feel a little bit more low end coming from behind me. But more or less, it's just here as a way of looking cool. Alright, so let's move on from the rack to the foot switch down here. And what I've got is this Rocktron All Access. It's a great design. Basically, it's a MIDI controller that allows you to assign pretty much any function you'd like to these switches. So the way that I'm using it at this point is I've got a couple of switches dedicated to certain effects that are dialed in my TC Electronic G major thing, and this also plays back some samples and sequences that we have to use sometimes in the course of the night. As you know, Pink Floyd had a lot of sound effects in their repertoire, and so what we use sometimes is just here and there stuff that we can't really play on instruments, stuff that doesn't even really come from a musical instrument. For example, the time sound where we get those tick-tock kind of things. This is where that comes in. Right now it's just an explosion, but eventually it turns into all the bells and chimes. So that comes from here. Also, say something like the cash register sound in Money. So whenever you hear that kind of thing, the sound effects, that's me. I'm triggering that and making that happen. So if you want to take a look at the back of the rig, to get that AM radio sound for the Wish You Were Here 12-string guitar, I have a compressor pedal down in there hooked up to a lo-fi pedal, an Ibanez LF7, and that just gives you sort of that old-time AM radio sound, which is the signature sound of that 12-string guitar in Wish You Were Here. So that would be this guitar, which is my old Ovation 12-string. I don't even know what the model is on this, but it is a 12-string from, I guess, like the early 80s. One of Ovation's finer guitars, and this gives you that lo-fi AM radio sound. And that's what you're hearing when I'm playing that. And that's coming through this SansAmp RPM preamp here. And that's just a solid state preamp. I'm basically using that just to kind of boost the signal of the guitar a little bit and also give me a little versatility. If I take the effects loop out, it's just a plain old acoustic guitar sound. And I use that on certain songs too. And sometimes I use the 6-string instead of the 12, which is also an Ovation. And that's basically it with the whole rig. There's really nothing else to it. It's kind of simple because it's just bass, you know, a couple guitars here and there. And that's it. So thanks for watching.